Red John is one of the hardest killers in fiction to rank detectives against because catching him is not just about being smart. There are a lot of characters in fiction who can solve murders, but Red John is different because he is not just hiding evidence, he is hiding himself inside an entire system. He uses fear, manipulation, and psychological warfare all at the same time. He does not just want to avoid getting caught, he wants to control the experience of being hunted. That is what makes him such a different beast compared to most serial killers. So for this list, I'm not going to be looking at who is the smartest detective here on paper. I'm looking at who could actually survive the Red John experience, and who could deal with the fact that law enforcement itself might be compromised, and who could finally be the one to put him behind bars. Some of these detectives could possibly do it, and some are amazing detectives who just happen to be dealing with the worst possible opponent for their skill set. At the S tier, we have they put Red John behind bars. They would find out about Red John's identity, but not get enough proof to put him behind bars. They have a suspicion, which means they'll kind of have an instinct that, there might be something up with this guy, but I really have nothing to back it up. And completely cooked is, yeah, they just have absolutely genuinely nothing. And first, we have James Doakes. Now, this is obviously my goat. James Doakes is the best character in Dexter, and I'll die on that hill, but that is a topic for another video. But as we all know, Doakes has insane instincts. If something is off, he will feel it immediately, just like how he had that gut feeling that something is wrong with Dexter when nobody else in the precinct could see it at all. So in a world where Doakes crosses paths with Red John, or even some of Red John's people, I absolutely think he would sense that something is rotten around these parts of town. The problem is that instincts alone are not enough against Red John. Red John is not hiding by acting normal in the office the way Dexter did. He is creating distance through his networks, and he's also actually pretty normal. He doesn't act normal, he is normal. Now, if Jane couldn't get the instinct that there was something off with Red John the first time he encountered him in his police uniform, no way that Doakes can. And the second Doakes starts stomping around loudly and making himself a threat, Red John is going to 100% notice, because as he did with Dexter, he made himself known that he was following him. Like, he literally said to Dexter, "I'm watching you." Doakes doesn't do anything low-key at all, and against someone who is not afraid to kill him, that's his biggest mistake. So yes, Doakes might have a good instinct for the oddballs in society, but Red John really isn't an oddball. This might come as a surprise. I feel like James Doakes would genuinely just be cooked. I feel like Red John is just too normal to even make James Doakes think that there's something wrong with him. Next, we have Rust Cohle. Now, Rust is one of the most natural fits for this case out of literally everyone here. Now, what makes Rust so good in this situation is not that he is just simply intelligent, but that he already sees the world through the exact kind of lens needed for a Red John investigation. Rust naturally assumes that evil does not just exist in one man, but in the structures that protect that man. I mean, he's literally dealt with a case similar to Red John in his own show, True Detective, so that mindset puts him ahead immediately. He would start wondering who is helping Red John, who is covering for him, and why leads just keep all of a sudden collapsing. Rust is also hard to scare in the traditional sense as well, so it would kind of be impossible for Red John's creepy tactics to hit Rust the same way they would hit, a more emotionally exposed detective. The reason I wouldn't say he would put Red John behind bars is because Rust is also pretty self-destructive. He has that obsessive edge where the case could consume him in an ugly way. I fully believe that he could unravel Red John's network and expose the truth, but whether it ends with a clean arrest or some messy showdown is where some of the doubt comes in. So I genuinely do think that Rust Cohle would find out about Red John, but I don't think he'll get enough evidence. Next, we have L from Death Note. Genuinely, this might be the most mentally exhausting detective Red John could ever run into. L is such a nightmare matchup because he strips all emotion and theatrics out of the case. Red John thrives when the person chasing him is either angry or desperate, or really just emotional in general. But L is literally none of those things. He's weird, but in a good way he's weird, and also impossible to read. That already makes him hard to manipulate, and if Red John can't manipulate you, then he's kind of cooked off the bat. The thing with L is that he does not need to understand Red John on some emotional level to beat him. Once L starts seeing the web of false leads and law enforcement manipulation, he is going to realize that he is not looking for a serial killer, that he is looking for a man with power. Once he knows that, it's just completely game over already. Red John would absolutely hate dealing with L because, he would not be able to get inside his head the same way he usually does with investigators, because usually the people that are investigating him kind of already have a history with him. Like, let's say Red John, killed their family. And also this time L wouldn't have to be trying to prove that the supernatural exists in order to win this case. And for him, if there's no supernatural involved, literally that's a guaranteed win for him. So L is 100% putting Red John behind bars. Easy peasy, no doubt in my mind. Next we have Will Graham. Will is probably the most dangerous detective here in terms of pure psychological understanding, but he is also one of the most vulnerable. That is what makes him such a weird case. On one hand, Will would probably understand Red John better than almost anyone here. He would grasp the performance, the ego, and the way Red John turns the act of killing into a message. He would feel all of that almost instantly. The problem is that Red John would kind of love that. Will's empathy is basically an open door that lets him enter the minds of monsters. But against Red John, that same gift could become a curse, because it was a curse for Hannibal. Red John would not just want to evade Will, he would want to contaminate him. He would want Will confused and emotionally compromised. So while I do think Will would uncover huge pieces of the truth, I also think Red John has the exact kind of psychological toolkit like Hannibal did to drag Will into deep water mentally. That is why I can't say that he would put Red John behind bars, but Will Graham, I feel like he does have the mind to figure out Red John's identity, but I do not think he will get enough evidence because he is also too vulnerable for that. Next we have Frank Lundy. This is one of the picks where I think people might sleep on him because obviously he's not as flashy as some of the others, but Lundy would actually do pretty solid here. What I like about Lundy in a Red John scenario is that he is patient and really good at identifying long-term behavioral patterns. He is very comfortable slowly building a profile and closing space over time. Like as he did with the Trinity Killer, he was following that case for decades and he was this close to busting him. Now against a killer like Red John, that kind of has some value here because Red John depends on people just rushing at him and panicking against him. The issue is that Red John is more than just a serial pattern like the Trinity Killer. He is a complete manipulator with reach. That is where I start to wonder if Lundy could fully overcome those high level stakes. And besides, we never really saw him display that type of defense in Dexter at all. Like he really hasn't been put up against an entire corrupted organization, so I don't really know how he would do against that. I just do not know if he has the extra gear needed to cut through all of that human corruption surrounding the case. So honestly, I think he would genuinely just have a suspicion. Next we have Alex Mahone. Alex Mahone is one of the more underrated picks on this list, and I actually think he would be pretty dangerous for Red John. Alex is one of those detectives who is incredibly good at getting inside the head of highly intelligent criminals without getting too romantic about it. He does not need impressive deduction moments, and he is pretty practical and very good at reverse engineering someone's thought processes. Now that matters a lot against Red John because he is constantly trying to force investigators to react emotionally while he stays hidden behind a layer of protection. The big concern is that Red John is way more socially embedded than most criminals Mahone has ever dealt with. But I also do think that Mahone is smart enough to adapt once he realizes that, wait, this whole entire system is corrupted. Now he might not have insane resources, but he still has enough smarts to give Red John a run for his money. Would I say that he finds out about Red John's identity? Honestly, I would say yeah. Next we have Batman. Now this is one of the worst possible matchups for Red John ever, like literally, because Batman is genuinely the detective you'd build in a lab to deal with this exact type of criminal. And for all my Batman fans out there, you know he has spent his whole career dismantling people exactly like that. Corruption to Batman is literally his middle name. Like dude, he's gone after the Joker, Riddler, Hush, even the Court of Owls. So bro, Red John, this is literally a walk in the park for Batman. I think Red John would realize very quickly that Batman is not someone he can toy for with at all. Because unlike Patrick Jane, Batman is not going to obsessively play Red John's game on Red John's terms, that's for sure. And technically, Batman doesn't really need any evidence to throw you in jail. I mean, he could simply just take you to Arkham Asylum and just throw you in there. He really doesn't play at all. I would even put Batman over L, I'm not gonna lie. And next we have Sherlock Holmes, and honestly this comes to literally no surprise. I feel like we wouldn't even have to talk about this because this is kind of widely known that Sherlock Holmes is one of the best detectives ever, and I would genuinely say that Sherlock Holmes is a better detective than Batman, just simply off his deductive skills, I'm not gonna lie. So it would kind of just be insane to say, or even insane not to put Sherlock Holmes in the same tier as these two. You feel what I'm saying? It's just unlogical to do that, mate. And last but not least, we have David Mills and Somerset from 7. So Somerset in this situation would have to absolutely carry this case, I'm not gonna lie. David Mills is more of the emotional person, but he does have the heart. I feel like David Mills has way more heart than Somerset when it comes to this detective stuff. And Somerset is kind of just like that cool, chill, methodical, and intelligent guy, and David Mills is literally the opposite. He has the fire and the instinct and that aggression that can make a detective dangerous, you know, in a fast-moving case. But you know, since we're up against Red John, and Red John, you know, likes to kill the family members of people to emotionally destroy them, kind of like he did Patrick Jane, and David Mills also experienced this. John Doe kind of decapitated his wife's head, so I feel like David Mills would not be too good in this situation, whereas Somerset would kind of be the person that needs to get David Mills on the right track in this sort of situation. So since we're ranking both of them together, they are genuinely cooked against Red John, 100%. Maybe they get a suspicion, maybe they have a suspicion that, you know, Red John is the killer, but I don't think that at all. I don't think that at all. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Was this list some buns, or was it pretty accurate? If you love talking about TV shows, movies, and character versus battles, join my Discord with the first link in the description. We also have a pretty active community who do character debates pretty frequently, and we also have power scaling teachers who you can ask questions if you ever need to. So yeah, join if you guys want to. Thank you.